the Stoic secret that proves the universe is one living thing. For over 2,000 years, an incredible idea, championed by some of history's greatest minds, has claimed that everything, from the smallest atom to the biggest galaxy, is connected as a single, living thing. For a long time, modern science basically called this mysticism and moved on. But what if those ancient Stoics were onto something? What if mind-blowing discoveries in science are starting to reveal that this cosmic web isn't just a metaphor, but something strangely close to reality? What you're about to hear is the story of an idea that just refused to die. An idea so powerful, it shaped the way emperors and slaves saw the world. An idea that got buried by the scientific revolution, only to pop up again, almost by accident, from the weird world of quantum physics and the complex dance of life itself. This is the story of the Stoic secret of Sympathy, a cosmic sympathy that connects us all, and the startling modern parallels that suggest the universe might just be one vast living being. The ancient doctrine, unveiling Sympathia. To really get this, we have to go back in time to the busy markets of ancient Athens, around 300 BC. This is where a philosopher named Zeno of Citium started teaching from a painted porch, or stoa, which is where his philosophy, Stoicism, got its name. For the Stoics, philosophy wasn't some stuffy academic game. It was a practical guide to living a good life, and the heart of their entire worldview was a concept that's both simple and incredibly huge: sympatheia. Now, when we hear sympathy, we usually think of feeling sorry for someone, but the Stoic meaning was way more literal and cosmic. It comes from the Greek words syn, together, and pathos, feeling or experience, and it describes a universe where everything is physically intertwined. The Roman emperor and famous Stoic Marcus Aurelius wrote about it all the time in his private diary. He'd tell himself, "Meditate often on the interconnectedness and mutual interdependence of all things in the universe." For the Stoics, the cosmos wasn't a cold, dead machine. It was a single, living, thinking organism. They believed it was powered by a kind of divine organizing principle they called the logos, a universal reason that was baked into matter itself. This wasn't some bearded god on a cloud. It was more like the operating system for reality, making sure everything was orderly and made sense. But how did this connection actually work? The Stoics had a theory for that too. They thought there was this subtle, energetic stuff called pneuma, which means breath or spirit. But this wasn't an airy-fairy soul. The Stoics were materialists, so they believed pneuma was a real physical mix of fire and air that soaked through every single thing. It was the cosmic glue. This pneuma created a constant tension, or tonos, holding the universe together like the surface tension on water, but on a cosmic scale. This tension meant that a cause over here could have an effect way over there, rippling through the whole system. A star exploding in some distant galaxy would, in some tiny but real way, affect a rock on Earth because they were both part of the same tense, cosmic fabric. This was their pre-scientific shot at explaining everything from magnetism to how a plant grows or how our brains work. They even saw a hierarchy to it. In a rock, pneuma just held it together. In a plant, it managed growth. In animals, it gave them senses. And in us, it shows up as our ability to reason. This is a pretty wild vision. It suggests the line between you and the world is basically an illusion. You aren't just in the universe. You are a part of the universe that's experiencing itself. Every breath you take is a trade with the cosmos. Every move you make sends a little vibration out across that cosmic web. And for them, this wasn't poetry. It was physics. It was the fundamental truth of how things worked. The ethical blueprint, living as part of the whole. Now, this belief in a living, connected cosmos wasn't just some fun fact for the Stoics. It was the absolute bedrock of their ethics. Because if sympathia is real, if we're all truly interconnected, then that has massive consequences for how we should treat each other. The Stoic conclusion was simple but revolutionary. To harm someone else is, in a very real way, to harm yourself. To act against the common good is to act against your own nature, because you are fundamentally part of that common good. As Marcus Aurelius put it, "What is not good for the beehive is not good for the bee." This simple idea is where Stoic virtues like justice and kindness come from. We are, as they said, made for the sake of one another. To help people wrap their heads around this, the philosopher Heracles came up with a powerful mental exercise. He said to picture your sense of self as a set of circles. The very center circle is you, your mind, your body. The next one out is your immediate family, then your extended family, then your neighbors, your town, your country, and finally, all of humanity. Hierocles said the job of a Stoic was to consciously pull those outer circles inward, to try and care for your neighbors, and eventually all people, with the same concern you have for yourself. It's the ethical workout for Sympathy, and one of their best tools for this is the view from above. It's an exercise where you imagine floating up high above yourself, seeing your house, then your city, then your country, and finally the entire earth as just a little blue marble in the vastness of space. From that cosmic point of view, your personal anxieties, your ego, your petty arguments, they all seem to shrink. You start to see yourself not as this isolated person, but as a citizen of the cosmos, a small but important part of a mind-blowing, interconnected whole. This completely changes Stoicism from a philosophy about just being tough into a powerful call for social and environmental responsibility. It tells us to see a brother or sister in everyone we meet, and to realize our own well-being is tied to the well-being of the planet we all share. For 2,000 years, this was the Stoic secret. Our ethics should come from the physics of the universe, from the basic fact that we're all in this together. The scientific revolution, a challenge to the cosmic web. For centuries, this Stoic vision of a living, connected universe was a pretty popular idea. But then, around the 16th and 17th centuries, a totally new way of seeing the world took over. The scientific revolution, led by people like Isaac Newton, changed everything. The universe, according to this new mechanical view, wasn't a living thing at all. It was a giant machine, like a clock. It was made of separate little bits of dead matter moving through an empty void. Sure, things interacted, but only through direct forces you could measure, like gravity. The subtle, universe-filling pneuma of the Stoics was thrown out as unscientific, a leftover from a more mystical time. The magic was gone. This new model was incredibly successful. It gave us classical physics, the Industrial Revolution, and the tech-filled world we have today. It worked so well that the idea of a living cosmos was basically tossed in the trash heap of history, seen as a nice poem, but just plain wrong. Science, it seemed, had shown that we were just lonely bits of matter in a random, meaningless universe. The main approach, called reductionism, explaining things by breaking them down into their smallest possible parts, became the only way to do serious science. The idea that a whole system could be more than just the sum of its parts was mostly forgotten. The Stoic cosmic web had been cut. Their secret idea wasn't just hidden anymore. It felt like it had been totally debunked. For the next few hundred years, the main story science and culture told us was one of separation. Mind from body, humans from nature, and every person from every other person. That feeling of deep connection the Stoics thought was the truth of reality was now just an emotion, a subjective illusion with no basis in fact. The universe was dead, and we were on our own, but science didn't stop. It kept digging deeper. And as it pushed into the 20th century, it started finding things, strange, paradoxical things that began to look a lot less like a clock and a lot more like that ancient Stoic web. The quantum comeback, echoes in the fabric of reality. The first big cracks in the universe as a machine model showed up at the start of the 20th century with the birth of quantum mechanics. Scientists looking at the world of atoms found that the old rules of physics just didn't work. Particles could be in multiple places at once. They could be both a particle and a wave, and just the act of looking at them seemed to change what they were doing. Reality at its very bottom level wasn't solid and predictable. It was fuzzy, uncertain, and weirdly connected. And the most mind-bending discovery, and the most relevant one for us, is something called quantum entanglement. Einstein famously called it spooky action at a distance. Here's a simple way to think about it. Say you have two particles that are created together so they become entangled. This just means their properties, like their spin, are linked. Now, you can separate these two particles and send them to opposite ends of the universe. The very instant you measure the spin of one particle and see it spin up, you know with 100% certainty that its twin, even if it's light years away, is now spin down. Think about that for a second. The information seems to travel between them faster than the speed of light, which is supposed to be the cosmic speed limit. It's as if the two particles aren't really separate things at all, no matter how much space is between them. They're acting like a single system. And later, a physicist named John Bell proved that this spooky connection isn't because of some secret information they were carrying all along. This non-local interconnectedness is a real, fundamental feature of our universe. This discovery just shatters the old mechanical view of reality. It points to a kind of deep, instantaneous correlation across huge distances that our normal brains can barely handle. Now, we have to be really careful here. This doesn't mean the Stoics were secretly quantum physicists. Their idea of pneuma was a physical substance, while quantum entanglement is a correlation in a quantum field. The how is totally different, but the what, the core idea of a deep, inseparable, non-local unity, is surprisingly similar. The Stoics, just by thinking about it, landed on a conclusion about reality that it took science 2,000 years and its wildest theories to even begin to glimpse again. It suggests the universe isn't a collection of separate things, but an indivisible whole, that the separation we see might be the real illusion. Some physicists have even started using language that sounds eerily Stoic. The late physicist Sir James Jeans, talking about what quantum theory might mean, said the universe was starting to look more like a great thought than a great machine. That's a philosophical leap, of course, but it shows how modern physics is pushing us to reconsider everything. The biological web, the universe breathes. These echoes of Stoic Sympathy aren't just in the weird world of quantum physics. We're also finding them right here on Earth, in the tangled web of life itself. For ages, biology was also dominated by that same mechanical view. Organisms were just survival machines, all competing against each other. But a new picture is coming into focus, one built on cooperation and connection. Think about a forest. We used to see a bunch of individual trees, all fighting for sun and water. We now know that's completely wrong. Underground, there's a huge, complex network of fungi, called a mycorrhizal network, that connects the roots of most of the trees. It's been nicknamed the Wood Wide Web. Through this network, trees share resources. A big mother tree, getting lots of sun, can send sugar and nutrients through the network to little saplings struggling in the shade. Trees can even send chemical warning signals to each other about pests. The forest, it turns out, is more like a single, cooperative superorganism. It's a living system, where the health of one part depends on the health of the whole. You couldn't ask for a better biological analogy for the Stoic pneuma. This idea scales up to the entire planet. In the 1970s, scientists James Lovelock and microbiologist Lynn Margulis proposed the Gaia hypothesis. They suggested that Earth itself, the air, the oceans, the soil, and all of life, acts like a single self-regulating system, kind of like a living organism. Life doesn't just put up with its environment, it actively creates and maintains the conditions that let it survive. For example, the very balance of oxygen and carbon dioxide in our atmosphere is maintained by living things. This idea was pretty radical at first, but it's now a core part of how we study the Earth. The Stoics, who saw the whole cosmos as one living thing, would have looked at Gaia and said, "Yep, makes sense." And this web of life even comes down to our own bodies. We're not individuals. Each of us is a walking ecosystem, home to trillions of bacteria and other microbes that make up our microbiome. These tiny passengers aren't invaders, they're critical partners that help us digest food, build our immune system, and even affect our moods. The line between me and not me is getting blurrier all the time. From the quantum level to the planetary level, the story science is telling is one of radical interconnectedness. The old model of a dead universe full of separate things is starting to look shaky. In its place is a vision the Stoics would have found very familiar, a unified, dynamic, and interdependent whole. Section 6, the modern Stoic, applying the cosmic web today. So, what does any of this mean for us, right here, right now? Why does it matter that a 2,000-year-old philosophy seems to be getting a nod from modern science? It matters because when you put this ancient wisdom together with modern discoveries, you get a powerful new foundation for how to live. It suggests that the Stoic ethical framework wasn't just wishful thinking. It might have been based on a surprisingly accurate intuition about how reality actually works. When you really let the idea of sympathy sink in, supported by these fascinating parallels in quantum physics and ecology, your perspective starts to shift. That feeling of being isolated, of being one person struggling against the world, can begin to fade. You realize that the lines we draw between ourselves and others, between humanity and nature, are mostly in our heads. This understanding makes the Stoic ethical project feel urgent and relevant. The call to act for the common good is no longer just a nice moral idea. It feels like a practical guide to living in reality. Harming the environment isn't some abstract issue. It's like poisoning the larger body you're a part of. Social injustice isn't just someone else's problem. It's a sickness in the social fabric that ultimately makes everyone weaker. This perspective can also do wonders for our own minds. Modern therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy, which was directly inspired by Stoic philosophy, are built on the idea that our thoughts, feelings, and actions are all connected. Change your thought, and you can change your emotion. Sympathy takes that one step further, connecting your inner world to the outer one. Practicing the view from above isn't just a calming trick. It's an attempt to align yourself with a bigger truth. Seeing your problems from a cosmic angle helps you realize you're part of a huge, resilient, unfolding story, which can put your own struggles in a much healthier context. Living like a modern Stoic means taking this cosmic web seriously. It means practicing empathy not just because it's nice, but because it's a more accurate way to see the world. It means making choices, what we buy, how we treat people, how we show up in our communities, knowing that every action sends ripples across that web. It means finding a sense of awe and belonging not in some other realm, but in the scientifically fascinating, interconnected universe we are actually in. We started with a secret idea from the ancient world, that the universe is a single, living thing, held together by a web of cosmic sympathy. We saw how that idea was pushed aside as mysticism, buried by a new science that saw the world as a dead machine. But now, the story has come full circle. From the weirdness of quantum physics to the vast networks of biology, science is rediscovering a world built on connection. Discoveries like quantum entanglement and the Wood Wide Web are painting a picture of the universe that an ancient Stoic would have instantly recognized. We aren't lonely fragments in a dead cosmos. It seems we're essential parts of a single, vibrant, and unified whole. It's not that the universe just has life in it. It's that the universe begins to look and feel alive. The implications are huge. It means that our deepest feelings, of awe when we look at the stars, of empathy for other people, of wanting to belong to something bigger than ourselves, aren't just random illusions. They might be echoes of the way things really are. The greatest secret of the Stoics is that living a good life means living with the knowledge that you are a vital thread in an amazing, seamless fabric of existence. And your life, every single moment of it, is a chance to strengthen that fabric for the good of all. What do you think? Does seeing these parallels between Stoicism and modern science change how you see your place in the universe? Let me know in the comments below. And if this video gave you something to think about, please consider liking and subscribing for more journeys into the big ideas of philosophy and science. Thanks for watching.